Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Crystal Earth podcast. I'm your host, Monet Noctaris, also known as the Black Rose of Gaia. Sorry, my cat is stumbling around. If you see her in the background, if you're watching this on YouTube, um, okay, she figured it out. I have a sweet little kitty cat. I have two cats, but this one, her name is Pom Pom, and she has something called cerebellar hypoplasia, which is, if you've ever seen like on TikTok or anything, like the cats that are wobbly, that kind of have like bobble heads and they kind of stand with their legs like a tripod and they kind of tip over a little bit. They kind of have to like walk funny. I have one of those. she's a perfectly happy cat, has no idea anything is different about her. She's incredibly spoiled, but sometimes she's a little bit disruptive. So if you hear any stumbling, that's probably her. You might also get a bonus appearance by my other cat since he's a little bit more rambunctious. His name is Bustifer Jones, the cat about town. My daughter was going through an obsession with the musical Cats. When I fostered him, he's a foster fail. I ended up keeping him. That was after he gave me ringworm, but that's a long story. He's a sweetie pie, but I don't know. He doesn't have a lot going on upstairs. It's all floof. He's a floofy tuxedo cat, so um he might grace us with his presence. He's following Pom Pom around right now. I should say she was obsessed with the musical Cats, not the movie. Just for the record. Anyway, moving on. Today, what I wanted to talk about on this podcast is we're talking about what Crystal Earth means, who it impacts, which is everybody, what the old grid was, what the new grid is. I need to talk about something that is it's what a part of this whole project that could not have been completed without these people. So I wanted to talk about this. This is what I'm referring to as the crystalline beings. So I mentioned this a little bit in my episode about myself, how I didn't know I was crystalline. I always have a hard time articulating what it means to be crystalline, but I'm going to do my best here. So, people who are crystalline are those who have incarnated here on this planet for this specific transition here from the old grid, the old Earth model, into crystal Earth. So, those of us who are crystalline, although it sounds cool, it comes with some challenges, but we hold the blueprint within our biology, our energetic systems, and our DNA to be able to interface with the new Earth. And we have different things that we are encoded with. So remember how I talked about how crystalline structures are programmable, right? There's crystals in everything from our computers to our phones to clocks. Like they're able to be programmed. Okay, so this is how the grid is able to be programmed and then broadcast as the operating system of a planet. And so for those of us who are crystalline, you can kind of think of it like we have an extra layer overlay maybe on top of our biological system that interfaces directly with the crystalline grid. And those of us who are crystalline may have all sorts of different roles. You could have like a really overt role in the recoding of Earth and the new grid, or you could be more of a stabilizer. You could be an amplifier. You could be here just to hold coherence of tone. You could be here to bring in new blueprints for technology, interface with the new grid. There's so many different reasons why you may be crystalline. And also, all humans do have crystalline structures, not just crystalline beings. Think about your bones. Those are crystalline, the water in your body. We even have, I forget what they're called. We even have like little crystals inside our ears. All animals have, all species have to help you have an internal compass of north, south, west, east. So we all have crystalline structures in our bodies, but crystalline people, it tends to show up a little bit more intensely. And for us, it can feel almost like we're not fully human because we don't quite fit in with the humans around us. Undoubtedly, if you're a crystalline person with a crystalline system, you're likely much more sensitive than those around you. I remember the first crystalline little human friend I had. Now looking back, I'm able to see it. But at the time, I didn't have the context, right? I just felt like I was just miserable because I felt like the only kid in my class who was like me until I met this little boy. And he was like me. It was like, oh my gosh, we get each other. He was extra sensitive. Like he used to get bullied in class for crying, or for being too sensitive. He wasn't like the other boys. And so that's, I think, why him and I kind of gravitated towards each other. We actually became really close friends. And I knew him all the way, we went to high school together even, and until he ended up getting a full ride to Harvard. I think he designed an engine for the International Science Fair. He won that for designing an engine that runs off of water. Classic crystalline kid. Speaks also to what can feel like our weaknesses are actually our biggest strengths. It's just that we weren't built for the environment that we grew up in. We were built for what's happening now and the next phase of Earth. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the other kind of traits to help you understand if maybe you're a crystalline being, or if you have children who are crystalline, because there are a lot of them currently incarnated here. They are the next generation and they are crystalline. So one of the things that shows up a lot for crystalline people is kind of a amorphous, um, not quite diagnosable neurodivergence. And I mentioned this in the episode about me, where it's what I had to kind of come to the conclusion of is that it's not pathology. It's not that I have a flaw, that it's disease or environmental. It's that my brain was designed to be different, to function in the new grid. When you're coming into contact with the old grid and your brain is designed to function clearly with the new grid, you're going to run into challenges. A lot of us are a lot more fluid. We don't respond as well to structure. We're a little bit more fluid with how we like to do things. So some of the rigid structures in school, for example, may not be compatible, right? So like ADHD, that's a big one. I'm diagnosed with ADHD, inattentive type. And for me, that was really hard because I'm just more of a fluid person. So for me, stepping into fluidity now, knowing that about myself has made my life easier. And the fact that I'm able to kind of have my own, business, my own practice, and make my own schedule is life-saving for me because I'm not fixed to a rigid structure that goes against my natural rhythms and natural inclinations. And I say that with great privilege. Like, I'm very, very lucky that I'm able to do that. Not everybody is yet. And so that's why, it can be harder when you're confined to a rigid structure like work where productivity comes first. And in the new grid parameters, things like productivity will not be enforced in the way that they were, because that's a byproduct of scarcity parameters, old grid logic. But anyway, it can be really, you'll hear this in the way I talk. My brain kind of works like a spiral, right? It's just a lot more fluid. It doesn't like follow linear model. So for people who are trying to kind of force themselves, because that's like the environment they're in, whether that be school or the workplace, or even a relationship structure that is rigid, you're going to come up against friction. If you're a crystalline person, it's going to feel like, I can't do this. I just have to power through it. And so your energy is being routed into endurance and surviving the conditions you're in versus being able to flow with the current right? So for a lot of us, having certain kinds of modifications in our lifestyle helps a lot, being able to work from home. A lot of us feel better in like the gig economy, right? Being able to do things kind of on our own time versus having to comply with a fixed, rigid structure. And it's not because we're lazy or defective, it's because our brains and our energy systems are not linear, they work differently. So if you resonate with that, give yourself a little bit of grace and compassion. I've talked about autism as well. That can be something where you kind of have the suspicion that maybe you're on the spectrum a little bit, but you don't quite meet the criteria for it because some of it fits, some of it doesn't, right? You may be sensitive to your environment, to noise, to light, to texture, to food. A lot of us have more rigid food preferences, and it's because our systems are just different. They're more sensitive. They can't tolerate disharmony and intensity as easily as someone who maybe has like a more solid, grounded earth body can. And that makes it really hard, especially for the kiddos. If you have kiddos like this, it's hard to find that balance between like making sure they get enough nutrition, for example, and allowing them to kind of stick with their safe foods. Remember that they're not choosing to be this way. They're not trying to be difficult. It's that they can't tolerate the intensity of sensation that most people can tolerate. Remember, if you have crystalline kids, just in general, like they're not trying to act out. Oftentimes it's not behavioral issues. You kind of got to meet them where they're at and allow for some of that fluidity to be able to be part of their lives when it can. Because if they're having to hold everything in at school and conform to like a strict, rigid structure at school, at home, they really may need that space to be able to have a little bit more control over what they are doing and what their experience is. So, things like rigidity in parenting does not usually work for these kids. And you may, if you have crystalline kids, you may have tried everything, and they still they're so um, spirited. So instead, it becomes about like, okay, how can I collaborate with my child? Here's Bustifer. We'll see if he jumps up. He came to say hello. Hello, baby. See, so it's about like how can I make life easier for these kids? Things will change as Earth continues to change. It will get easier for them. And this transitionary time, it's really important to be able to work with them when you can, when it allows for that, and give them as much choice as reasonably possible. They also you might also have kids that they're spirited. They don't understand why they should respond to authority. They see to the truth, they see to the core, they see through rules and question them, right? And it's not because they're bad kids. It's because they they have a hard time believing the lies we tell ourselves. That rules should be rules for rules' sake, that parents should be authoritative for authority's sake, because it will teach them um, to respect authority, right? These kids see right through it. And if you're a crystalline person, you may have experienced that as well in your early life. And now, if you're in the workplace, authority shows up everywhere. Another thing that's important to name that kind of goes along with the neurodivergence as well is a lot of crystalline people, kids, adults, of course, there's more kids here than adults, are going to have some gender fluidity. They may not fit quite neatly into binaries in general. And they're not trying to be difficult, they're just more fluid. Binaries don't necessarily compute with them, and they may feel out of place trying to fit into one binary over another versus what society tells them to be and to do. And it may shift as well throughout their lives, and that's okay. That's normal. Allow your kids to be who they are and support them without trying to, like, what's that word? Pigeonhole? Is that the word I'm looking for? Pigeonhole them into a certain identity. If you can just support them in being who they are and who they know to be, that helps. Because from every angle in their life, they probably feel so different than their peers, the other people around them. So if you can be supportive with them at home, that helps. And if you're a crystalline person, you may know exactly what that feels like and wish your parents would have done that for you. Whether it comes to gender, sexuality, and freedom of expression as well. A lot of these kids, they're creative. Um, they may want to have fun colored hair. They may want to express themselves in ways that aren't maybe typical for what we're told a kid should be. As adults, too, I'm kind of like toggling back and forth between kids and adults. It really applies to both, all of these principles. For adults, that goes for us too. Spent my whole life being afraid to be myself until I was able to step in and fully embody my own tone, because we all have this is the beautiful part about crystalline people. They'll have like a tone, whether it be a color, a sound, a texture, or all of the above, that is kind of like our essence. And when we can allow ourselves to be that, to embody that, instead of just being the blank slate of trying to be whoever everybody in our life wants us to be, we're a lot happier, right? That's why you'll see a lot of crystalline people who maybe express themselves a little bit differently if they're actually living into that diversity of who they know they are on the inside, and they're not afraid to do that. And they haven't been so conditioned by society to kind of fit in, right? Most of us who are crystalline, we spend our whole lives trying to fit in. But fitting in, the more we try to fit in, the unhappier we become, until we're just kind of in a state of just wearing a mask all the time. That kind of ties back to the neurodivergence side too, because sometimes it's like the only way we learn how to get by is by putting on a mask every day, pretending to be a human, putting on a smile, and performing for people to get by through the day, because we've had to learn how to do that to adapt. So while that does make us adaptable and able to function in society, over time, it wears us down. It's exhausting. And so oftentimes that's why crystalline people gravitate towards each other in certain like sectors of lifestyle and ways of living and communities, is because it's like, oh, I found my people. Crystalline people kind of like form pods, right? When you find one, you don't let them go. And you find that you have all these similarities with them. And so if you have kids, encourage them to find kids that are like them, because there are a lot of crystalline kids out there. And when they can form those bonds, those safe bonds where they don't have to pretend to be someone that they're not, then that helps them to thrive and not just survive and tolerate the environment around them. A lot of us also have different kinds of interesting, maybe like abilities or gifts and different intelligences. We might be really, really like almost like savant, like, if we're going to use that type of terminology, um, intelligences. For example, they may gravitate towards music. They may be able to play by ear. They may be able to like, for example, I have a daughter who is kind of like hyperlexic. She started talking and reading really early. If you're crystalline, you might be really kind of like crazy good at math. Or you might be kind of on the flip side. There are certain things that just don't compute for us. Like for me, I'm in the math is not a language that my brain can translate side. So we may have challenges in areas. Reading might be really difficult, whereas like designing a complex system might feel easy. You may not have grown up feeling book smart, but you think big. Or you may have grown up feeling like school was easy. You just kind of were able to academically do great, but you never really applied it because it just wasn't interesting to you, right? There's kind of a whole spectrum of different types of crystalline people and how we function. Another thing about us is that many of us struggle with mental health issues, with dependency on substances, because when you're constantly trying to fit into a world that wasn't designed for you yet, it can feel suffocating. Your heart might feel too open and fragile, right? And so insensitive. So you have to kind of like numb it. And it becomes a survival strategy. It's not because they want to get into bad things. It's just that they can't handle the demands of life because they're wired differently, built differently. Physical sensitivity is another big thing. You may not be able to handle certain environments, strong smells, artificial tastes, or food. Or you could be on the flip side. Eating food is really stressful because it's a really intense experience. So you kind of gravitate towards your kind of like your little safe things that are dependable, right? There's just a whole spectrum of different ways that this shows up. I think it's fitting that for this video, my brain is literally jumping all over the place in true crystalline fashion. But here's how we kind of like heal once we're adults and we may have internalized a lot of shame about how we are. What becomes the only path forward, especially as we're stepping into Crystal Earth and the new grid system, is that we begin to allow ourselves grace, compassion, and love for being different. Because the ways in which you're different, I know it doesn't feel like it all the time, but they are actually some of your biggest strengths. It's just that the environment hasn't matched what you're here for and the way you were designed. It's not your fault. You're not weird. Well, unless you like being weird. I like being weird. I just claim it. I'm like, yep, I'm weird, whatever. It's easier to accept it. But that's what all this is about, right? Self-acceptance, accepting that we're different, that we're not quite like everybody else. And when we can recognize that and see, oh, I'm not the only one, and there is a different reason for it. There's a context for it. It's not pathology. It's how we're designed. We are crystalline. We have crystalline energy systems, and we are designed to interface with the new grid system. So give yourself some grace. If you suspect you might have crystalline children, give them some love. Allow yourself to be flexible and not make it mean that you're a bad parent. You're meeting them where they're at and know that things will get easier. We were built for the now going forward of Earth's trajectory and Earth's crystalline epoch. We were not built for the old one. We all arrived here kind of during this big threshold. And so if we've survived through it, then we're still here. And all that's needed is self-love and compassion until the parameters of the world that we were born into have shifted and have become enforced on a mass scale. That's going to begin unfolding on the winter solstice of this year. So if you can hang in there, things won't get magically better overnight for everybody, but they will feel better. You will feel in tune with Earth's tone, Earth's song, instead of feeling like you are clashing with it constantly and living inside a world that is out of tune, that is physically, energetically, emotionally painful. The environment is changing. So that's all I wanted to say today about that. I hope you learned something. And if you want to know anything more about what Crystal Earth means, check out some of my other episodes and videos. Feel free to go to my website, monetnoctaris.com, to see what I'm currently offering. And remember to subscribe. Much love to you all.